day, my little robins. It's me, Beth. Another week has passed, which means you get another video from, well, me here on this channel. If you haven't already read the title, on Thursday, the 5th of December, I went to Manchester Gorilla to see Poets of the Fall and their Ultraviolet tour. You should know how these tour reviews go by now. It's pretty self-explanatory. So we're just going to get into the, this little review. Before we begin, if you want to support me and the channel, you can by clicking like to show me some love. You can click subscribe and tap that bell to be notified of when I upload on this channel. Let's just dive straight into Poets of the Fall tour review. Let's start with the good, and trust me guys, there are a lot of positives and pretty much no negatives about this night. Poets of the Fall have been on my band bucket list ever since 2010, when I fully got into the band and started to appreciate, their music and their back catalogue, and I haven't looked back since. If you've seen any of my, Poets reactions here on the channel, you will know that I've been saying recently, that song to song, album to album, this band constantly change their sound and style. They never really stick to one thing. That allows them to grow as a band, and this gig was no exception because it just seemed like there was a perfect balance of songs. So we're talking Ultraviolet album, that was the album tour, so there were going to be songs off that, but it was also a good mix of songs off, Carnival of Rust, Signs of Life, Temple of Thought, and even Jealous Gods. Each upbeat song will be paired with something slightly more slow and melodic, to give a contrast and, to keep the audience, from getting bored, because some bands will just play really high intense songs and then, bum us out with a slow depressing song, whereas Poets were like, right, we're going to make you happy, then we'll slow it down and then we'll slowly, rise back up to a state where you guys are like, yes, yes, yes. And the fact that towards the end of the set list they put Days, Lift and Choice Millionaire so close to one another got the crowd so lively towards the end of a set, where normally towards the end of a set, you're trying to calm the crowd down slightly, but Poets were like, get up, jump in the air, and it worked. And that shows a sign of, for me, a great band where they can get the balance right on a set list. Poets have been around a very long time, so if they didn't know what they were doing by now, I would be concerned as a fan. It was just an amazing set list, and Poets can do no wrong in my eyes. About the song Rogue. Now, when you go to see a lot of gigs, especially a lot of metal bands or rock bands, most of the time you will get the cliche drum solo. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love a good drum solo. There are some amazing drummers out there who deserve to be showcased, but I get a little bored when I see drum solo, and that's where Rogue was different. Marco, he went off stage, and it's an instrumental track that pretty much lets the whole band let loose on stage for a few minutes, showcasing their individual talents, what they bring to the band. The crowd ate it up and the band were clearly feeding off the audience. They were smiling, they were joking and playing around with each other on stage, and that kind of filtered back into the audience, who some people who in the audience were not expecting a 5-minute instrumental song where the whole band got a solo. So it was nice to see those people's reactions, but to me, that song, yes, it just showcases that Poets is a well-rounded band. Sure, I always rave about Marco's vocals, but the band itself is equally amazing, and it was given a time to shine. It was towards the start of the set, so, the crowd were still, yeah, amped up and, really excited to be there. And it was just, a nice little interval. I also think it gave Marco probably a chance, to go rest his voice backstage. But, yeah, When a band can get the crowd like hyped just as much as the vocalist being like jump, 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 you know you're doing something right. Venue. It's one of the smaller venues in Manchester. It has a small balcony where I was like stood for like the whole night with like a perfect view of the stage. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys, sometimes when you go to these smaller venues, you're either overpowered by like the sound and the lighting, or you're underwhelmed the further back from the stage you are. But Gorilla got the balance just right. The sound was second to none, and I was at the very back of the balcony and I could hear it perfectly, and like the lighting wasn't too intense. It was more focused on the people who were standing downstairs. The occasional light flashed up in the balcony, so I wasn't blinded. I have found myself getting blinded at multiple gigs this year, and it just kind of takes you out of the moment. The staging and like I would say the overall theme was pretty simple as well, but that's not a bad thing, you know. It was literally just the band on stage with like a cloth backdrop. There was nothing extravagant, there was nothing crazy. I know I've been told in the past that, you know, sometimes at like their live shows or when they've done, you know, festivals, they do go a little bit above and beyond. But this was the Ultraviolet tour, and if you guys are familiar or have listened to the Ultraviolet album, it is rather chilled and dialed back, and so the chilled, dialed back theme was kind of there. It wasn't too in your face, and I liked that. Sometimes a band doesn't need the flash. Poets have been around for years, they've done their time, they can pretty much do whatever they want on stage and fans will appreciate it. Everybody's cup of tea. I'm just going to like admit that now, so I'm not going to say go and see them live, because like I said, they're not everyone's cup of tea. If you've never heard of Poets or you're intrigued, I recommend going and, you know, listening to some of their songs, and if you like what you hear, the next time they tour, I highly recommend you go and see them live, because they put on a show and it'll be like an unforgettable night. In the comments below, you know, I would love, you know, to hear if some of you guys have ever seen Poets, you know, live before. You know, some of your favourite Poets songs, you know, let's just start a conversation. Even share some of the gigs you've gone to in 2019, you know, or rounding off the decade, because, next year's 2020, the start of a new decade, which means even more bands to go and see live, and hopefully a new album or new material from Poets, which would equal another tour. I really hope they tour again, because I'm going to drag so many of my friends to go see it. Let's, you know, just wrap up this, you know, little review. If you want to support me and the channel, you can by clicking like to show me some love. You can click down here to subscribe to the channel because, well, nothing's stopping you, and I do try and upload weekly. You can check out my last 2 videos or playlists right here, depending on what mood I'm in when I'm editing this. Like my sign says. Sorry, I had to sniffle. Keep listening to good music. Poets of the Fall is good music. I'm Beth. Goodbye.